you're coming along on your Sunday morning, and I hope I don't terribly disappoint you, because I don't really write notes or anything, I just kind of ramble on. So, and feel free to sort of stop me and ask any questions along the way, and if I'm kind of telling weird Simpsons stories or something, just get me back on the right track. But I guess first of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about how this work kind of has evolved. This is essentially the sort of third time that I've shown this, what I guess I'd call this sort of work. The first version I showed it at Gertrude Contemporary Art Space in Melbourne at the end of 2006. And in that kind of guise, it was called Some Kind of Empire. And it was very sort of, it's probably very sort of similar aesthetic to how it's presented here. Had the sort of aqua walls and the mirrors, but I just had sort of 4 large vitrines and tables there. And then I reworked it for the show at Callum Gallery, which was about a year ago, which was called In My Nature. And that's also, I've sort of stuck with that title for this version of it. So this version is essentially like if I took both of those 2 previous shows and kind of just mushed them together. So the Callum show was sort of very colourful, and the Gertrude show was more sort of restrained palette. And throughout all the evolutions of this work, it's kind of become more and more over the top and more detailed, and I don't know when it's going to stop. It just keeps getting more post kitsch. And I don't know if I'd say post kitsch. I feel it's very kitsch, But I really love kitsch, and basically the work that I make it's all related to just things that I love looking at and kind of and thinking about, and places that I love to go and visit, kind of reworking them into my own vision. And like, I grew up in the Dandenongs in Melbourne, which is very distinct from Dandenong, I must point out, if anyone's from Melbourne. So the Dandenongs is sort of the first kind of major natural sort of area outside of suburban Melbourne. And it's really lovely, sort of forest, and a lot of people go there on sort of day trips. And one of the experiences I sort of had growing up there was I became quite bored with how sort of brown and green nature was. Like I kind of got a bit sort of blasé about that I had this beautiful forest on my doorstep. So whenever I'd go for some walks through the forest, I'd always kind of wish that I'd stumble across some kind of, I don't know, monster there, or some sort of really amazing, colourful animal. And in retrospect, I feel it's a bit of a shame, because this area of Melbourne is one of the few places where lyrebirds live and still habitate. And that's sort of, a lot of people go there to try and spot lyrebirds. And I never actually saw one, which, is kind of testament to, I guess, that not having sort of spent enough time in the forest and just finding it a bit boring. And one of the other things that I was really influential when I was growing up was going to natural history museums. And Melbourne used to have a really sort of fabulous Victorian style museum. And I think I find that the new incarnation of the museum leaves me a bit cold, and it kind of has like the neighbours set in it, and not enough sort of emphasis on kind of natural history anymore. And so that was sort of something that really stuck in my mind, was going on school excursions to the Natural History Museum, and also going to the Art Museum. And museums in general, I always just really loved the way, I think I'm sort of a very ordered person in my mind. I like organising things into categories and types. And so I liked when I went to the museum that nature wasn't messy, it was kind of neatly packaged into these little sort of boxes, these dioramas that summarise the ideal of everything. And you got to see, like you'd see the sort of African, lion or something, and in the moment, the action moment when it makes the kill. So I think that's, compared to the experience I had of growing up in this forest where, you live amongst lyrebirds and you never, ever see one in your entire life. You go to the museum and you see all the kind of great dramatic moments, like right there in a moment, and you can just jump from one to the next. And one of the other things I really loved in the Melbourne Museum was upstairs. They had all the minerals all beautifully laid out, and you go into the dark room and see the phosphorescent minerals. And I sort of take all these little things, and I've been lucky enough to be able to travel overseas and go to the Paris Natural History Museum and the Vienna Natural History Museum, as well as places like Versailles and some of the Austrian palaces, which this is sort of what I take this kind of colour scheme from, is visiting one of the Austrian palaces. And I just take all these little bits and pieces and kind of throw them together and keep kind of, putting them together and sort of trying to reorganise them into a way that isn't so scientific and just appeals, more to my personal aesthetic. So when I went to Europe about 3 years ago, that was probably a very sort of important time, because I had the experience of seeing all these great palaces, and I realised that at that stage my work was very much, looking very sort of Victorian museum. And so now I had this experience of going to like Versailles and Fontainebleau and just seeing all these amazing interiors, and the Vienna Natural History Museum, which is a palace museum. And I just really fell in love with all the decoration of particularly the sort of Baroque and Rococo. And I sort of realised the more that I looked at all the decoration, that much of the kind of motifs in it were drawn from nature. The flowers and birds and fruits were all kind of woven into these patterns. And to me, it kind of epitomised that sort of very human desire to sort of control nature in every way, and that we would sort of look at, at sort of a bunch of flowers and then say, oh, well, let's sort of wheel them into this kind of pattern and cast them in bronze and sort of forever, just have them in that form, perfect forever. And I've kind of often, and I've sort of things like taxidermy that I'm also interested in, and all these things, like I just kind of mush it all up, and it all comes out looking like this. And I mean, I always feel like I never sort of have enough time, I could really obsess for ages and ages over all these interiors. So it's kind of I often say that pressure, and time deadlines are kind of the thing that stop me from probably going completely mental, because when you have a deadline, you just have to say, okay, it's time to stop now. And, the people are coming to pick them up tomorrow to take them to the art gallery. So, this is the end. And now, just sort of trying to think, what else is it? I'll tell you a bit about the process of making these works. These are all essentially the trains and the tables and the bureaus are casts. I do everything myself, pretty much. The only thing I don't do myself is I get the table spray painted by my brother or my father, who are in the panel beating industry. And so the tables in the cases, they're essentially made up of epoxy resin casts, and I've been developing various techniques to do with selectively dyeing areas of the resin, and it's been a kind of it's an ongoing process, and it can be a bit fraught with anxiety, because sometimes the things all go to pieces as you're pulling them out of the moulds. And I actually think that despite everything here, I'm not actually a great mould maker, because I'm just very impatient, and I certainly don't have an engineer's mind, and the fact that everything here is still standing is quite incredible to me. And I don't know if any of you saw just before the talk, I actually came in and had to kind of do a quick fix on one of the little table legs there. So I just kind of make everything so that it all hangs together, hopefully for the duration of the exhibition. But the one reassuring thing about showing here is that they do have a conservation department. So there's someone on hand to fix it in my absence, I hope. So I use a variety of materials in making this work. I mean, as you can see see I've got probably the longest materials list of anyone in this exhibition, and it basically spans everything from sort of industrial resins through to, spotlight craft materials and just all sorts of random weird stuff that I find. And I really like having basically the list there is kind of the extent. And I'm quite particular about what materials I use. Like, I don't like to use anything that's natural. I like them to use all synthetic materials. I've never used real taxidermy. All these animals I make up myself based on photographs, and I use a sort of a bit of a school technique of making a wire frame and paper macheing it, and then kind of sticking the fur on sort of tuft by tuft. And also I use sort of like the expanding foams, and I kind of just go through, like the hardware shop or the craft shop and kind of pick a whole lot of bits and pieces and just sort of experiment and try things out. And I'm always trying to kind of push the sort of potential of all the materials that I work with. And it's amazing to me how when you really focus on, on fake fur or something, like how you can just keep on developing it and developing new ways of using it that, like I started to just make feathers out of fake fur, and it actually worked, to me it seemed to work quite well. And I guess what I'd say is that I never actually try to really fully replicate or be, sort of simulating things perfectly. Like, I like them to have that handmade look to them, the feeling that you can see that there are flaws and there are mistakes, and it just reflects the sort of the best of my ability to make things at a particular time, rather than sort of outsourcing to a professional to do it and for it to all look really kind of clean. For me, the thing that sort of matters is that it's all made by me and it has my stamp, and you can see my successes and my failings all there